Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Respecting the Beer. My name is Gary Arndt. With me again, as usual, is the brewer to the stars, and by that I do not mean celebrities, but actual celestial bodies, Bobby Fleshman. And we got a guest with us today. Drove all the way up from Madison. Thanks for coming, by the way.
Yeah, no problem.
I know it's a bit of a drive. We got Billy DuPlanty. He is the co-founder of the Youngblood Beer Company in Madison.
That's right.
And there's a lot of cool things I think we can talk about with respect to your company and the beer and a lot of the things you do. But why don't we just start at square one? And how did you get involved in beer and brewing, and why was it a mistake?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you came to the conclusion before I even start It's like
Everyone
starting a
says
movie
same
at the
thing,
end.
like getting involved as starting a brewery.
It's
Horrible decision.
20 years later. Boom, boom. So I started my journey way before I even drank, right out of high school. I started as a merchandiser for Beechwood Distributing, who is a current partner for Youngblood in the 7 Milwaukee County area. So I don't hold grudges. I do, but just not to them, I guess. They do a really good job. But I started as a merchandiser, selling beer, basically filling shelves, talking to customers, doing that before I even consumed alcohol. I didn't drink until I was almost 20, almost 22, actually. So like I had a lot of years of not drinking, but I was still around beer. And then after about a year and a half of that, I got unceremoniously fired by the fine folks at Beechwood because I was summer help, quote unquote. And I was like, okay, well, that stinks. Whatever. Right away, turned around and got a job with WOW, which is now Beer Capital. That was Washington, Ozaukee, Waukesha County distributor. Worked for them for 10 years. Jumped into sales over there and jumped into sales for them. Did that in Milwaukee and kind of all over the beer cap territory, depending on the time. After that, I jumped over to a company I worked for and then purchased called Craft Beer Partners. So I was kind of a broker salesperson for Epic, Upland, Oso, Shiner, One Barrel, Potosi, all of those kind of slipped in out. Tallgrass, that was a good one in there.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
Yep.
TG. That was, I worked for them for 4 years or for 2 years.
During
and then
this
I bought
time,
that.
you're selling beer to retail establishments, restaurants, bars, things like that. What do these places look for when they select a beer, if they want to serve it?
That is a chaotic question. So I don't really. The way that I sell is I've always thought the first thing you have to sell is kind of your personality and yourself to the people. Otherwise, if they don't like you like relatively quickly, it doesn't matter if you have the
No,
best
and
beer
I
in the
say
world
this
or
as
the
someone
worst.
who recognizes the extreme importance of people who do sales, and someone who sucks at sales.
Yeah.
And you go to a lot of places, and some places will have like a bunch of taps and everything, and they got beer signage everywhere. You get the neon lights and everything. And I always wonder, like, well, why do you pick this as opposed to that?
Yeah, so really it's kind of a listening game, and just you go in and you survey their taps so you know exactly what they need. And when I was doing the whole craft beer thing, I had all these different brands, so I always had something I could slot in. So it's really just paying attention and being a good listener and becoming an actual partner to what they're trying to accomplish. If they're trying to curate a really great list, you have to come with something other than I need to move this beer. You come with the idea of you get to buy this beer, and you switch the mentality on them like that a little bit, and it starts to make them feel like you're sharing the best thing that you have to offer, and vice versa. You're getting the sale, which you need, and then most of the time, actually, a lot of my best friends now are people that own or manage at places. And over those 4 years of craft beer partners and some of the years that I had with WOW and Beechwood and Beer Capital, you just become friends with these people, and then they just trust you because you've built up that you've shown them that you know what you're talking about and you're willing to stand behind it. So they know that you're going to keep coming back in there.
And when you're working for a distributor, do you care what you sell, just as long as you sell something?
That's kind of the. You do care because you are compensated based on caring for certain things at certain times. So they do you get a little spiff if you sell an extra couple cases of Mike's Hard Lemonade this month, and it's like $5 a case. Cool. So I get an extra if I sell like 20 of those. I'm coming out pretty good, like untaxed on top
Mhm.
of what my normal salary is. So there's little spiffs that way. So
And
you're
the unicorn situation for a supplier is that they're offering these bonuses, but they're also someone that salesperson or representative is a fan of, even without those benefits, right?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you buy into a specific brewery, like I'll use one of my favorite breweries, Great Lakes. When I worked for Beer Capital, Great Lakes was like it still is like a top favorite brand to me. And I would like go out of my way because I knew the beer really well and I knew the sales team that worked for that brewery really well. I would go out of my way to, hey, if I'm not going to get anything else here that I can make an extra dollar on, I'm gonna maybe throw that bone to my guys over there at Great Lakes. And that I'm pretty sure like every brewery does that. That's why having a brewery representative in the market is very important because you kind of don't give them a chance to not think about your brand, and
Right.
you can always be there to help them out.
The double-edged sword of having a wholesaler is they collect the check, number one, and you don't have to worry about collecting checks. If you're
Mhm.
selling directly, that's a lot of headache. But they're also doing the heavy lifting and making those deliveries and so on and so on. They have cold storage. But the other thing is they're representing how many other breweries in this case, how many
Mhm.
other brands, how many other flavors. So you have to get in there and fight for their attention.
Mhm. And I mean, that also gives you if you put a person in that market, you show dedication to those reps that you're not willing to let your brand slip in that market.
Right.
And that's just as important. That's a quality assurance person that they can call at any time.
So how do you then make the transition, or what brought you to make the transition from sales to actually making beer?
I still do the sales portion of our brewery. My partner Kyle is our head brewer. He came from Door County Hacienda. He was one of the first brewers over at Octopi. He's been around for a pretty long time, even though he's younger than me. Whatever. Screw you, Kyle. Uh,
He says with love.
Allison just sat down, by the
Hi,
way.
by the way.
Yeah.
let's see. Oh, so the reason for the transition is I realized that I've been selling for a really long time other people's beer, and it was time to start selling my own because I didn't like the decisions that were being made. Like I saw Tallgrass die, and that was a really great brand for me, and they
And
just
some background with me was Billy and I talked about this before, but that was one of our favorite quote local breweries before we moved to Wisconsin. Right, Tallgrass. They were Kansas City.
Manhattan,
Yeah,
Kansas.
Manhattan. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So down in Oklahoma, they were one of our favorites.
Yeah, phenomenal beer.
Wait, they're the one with 8-bit?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Buffalo Sweat.
No! Wait a minute.
yeah,
Did
they
I
did-
know
oh.
this? I did know this.
I think
No.
you did.
Velvet
It-
Rooster.
Oh.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Vanilla
Anyway, didn't mean
Bean
to
Buffalo
derail,
Sweat.
but
Oh,
that's
man.
a
They had great-
pour one out.
I was thinking
yeah.
if it was local here, and I was like, I don't remember Tallgrass being here. Never mind Kansas. Right.
Briefly, yeah.
No, but they were a great brand, and I saw them die from decisions that were being made, and I also saw that I was being asked to sell more and more and more of core things, and to me, that's great if you have core built in, but I wasn't really interested in that. I was interested on the new fun thing because that's really fun to talk about, and that's an easy thing to sell. And so I was reaching out to like Upland and Epic I did like a 20 line tap takeover with Epic. And I basically said, give me everything new and weird that has never come to the state. And they just sent like pallets of beer. And I did a big old event. I think that was with Gino at Three Cellars in Menominee Falls. What's up, Gino? But
Also, Billy's a great salesperson
Yeah.
all the time.
I'm
And
taking
he's
notes
so
like
personable.
crazy.
Yeah.
it's a defect of some sort, I'm sure. There's
No,
some sort of weird
a
ADHD
positive
thing that makes
defect,
me
yeah.
Lean in, man. Lean in.
Totally. That's exactly it. But I would reach out to these like companies and they would be like, can't you sell more of this? And I'm like, I will sell more of that if you give me these things to sell with it. Like, just give me that opportunity. I'll up your dollars. I'll up your CEs. Let's go. And sure enough, it worked. And I was like, okay, well, I would really like to just do this on my own because I was I was kind of I had just brought the actual origin of Youngblood as I was sitting with my very good friend Tom Dufek, who we started the brewery with as well. And we were sitting at Maduro, and I had just locked his canned cocktail company, Plain Spoke, up to Craft Beer Partners, and that is a brand that we now own. Youngblood owns and makes their delicious handcrafted cocktails in a can. We were talking right after that, and in this moment of just like clear-headedness, I was like, I don't know how long I could do this. And he's like, dude, I just signed you. What are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, man. I think I want to start a brewery. I don't know how long I can continue to do this thing. And he just goes, do you want to start a brewery? I was like, yeah. And he's like, are we starting a brewery? It's like, yeah. And then the next morning he called and we were finally sober.
I picture, there's ice packs on your head
Yes.
and you're talking on the phone or whatever. Yeah.
That's how it was, because I know I just got up and I know my eyes were all bloodshot, and I was just like, oh God, too much.
Yeah.
So we had like 3 cigars. Like no matter
Oh,
what, you're
yeah.
walking out of cigars a little stuck.
Yeah.
And he's like, are we doing this? I'm like, yeah. Okay, love you, bye, click. And that was it. And then we needed to find a brewer. And then our friend Eric, who now owns a bar called Beer Salt, he used to work at Draft and Vessel in Tosa.
What's his last name?
Or in Shorewood, Eric Gutbrot.
Yeah, I know him well.
He's awesome dude. He's like, he was telling me, you gotta talk to my friend Kyle. You gotta talk to my friend Kyle. And I'm like, I don't know who your friend Kyle is. I'm not gonna do it. I'm talking to the guy. There was a friend of mine who worked at Upland at the time, and I was like, he might do it. And I love Upland's beer. I love their one-off stuff. He brought back Champagne Velvet, which is one of my favorite beers of all time. It's like, let's go. And then that fell through. And then I was at Draft and Vessel again. He's like, I'm calling him. You don't have a say. And then we set up a meeting, and that was that. First thing he asked me was like, what's your favorite kind of beer to drink? And I was like, I love unfiltered Pilsners. I like, light lagers. I like a lot of those types of beers. I'm not the biggest fan of Belgians, which he was like, are you kidding me? Because he loves Belgians. But I love an unfiltered Pilsner or just even a Czech style Pils. I love Pilsners. Big fan. And he goes, this is going to work. And then we locked him up, and that was it. So
it strikes me how much yin and yang we have as to where I come from and what I've been looking for in partners. And it's exactly the opposite of where Billy's coming from. I came from the brewing side.
Yeah.
Just beer. And learning the business has been school of hard knocks ever since day one.
Well, that's what was very unique for us right out the gate, which we held as a very prideful thing was, Tom had background running restaurants and bars. Kyle obviously knew how to run brewing, and I had done sales. So we're like, okay, well this works. And I had this half romantic idea where I'd just be tossing like 8 kegs in the back of a van, and like I'd just go out and sell those 8 kegs, and my job's done for the week. The tap room generates most of the money. This is gonna work. Because we were right off the squares.
Well, and the tap room is so beautiful too.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and then COVID hit, so we couldn't even show off that
how
beautiful
about
building.
them apples?
Right?
Yeah.
You opened in 2020, right?
Yeah, May of 2020.
Yeah.
We were going to open like on St. Patty's Day,
Which is
the day they closed all the bars.
This is called Mick Fleshman. You can imagine here in our tap room the line that we had for an Irish holiday. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I remember just us being like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? People left their jobs to come work at our spot. Like some people were getting paid pretty well, and they came to help us out, start this thing, kick it off, and we're like, I guess we'll figure it out. So we crowlered our first 8 beers because we had to. We just got a pallet of cans. We crowlered everything.
Same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we're like, okay, I guess this is how you do it. And we sold through those batches, and we're like, okay, cool. That works.
Yep.
There were even the George Floyd marches that were going on in Madison while we were like building out our space. So it was like all this stuff. We're just like, there's never going to be a time where this works out. And we didn't make our own wort at first. So we had to go around. We did it at Vintage. We did it at Lucky's. We did it at
and you
Hop
transported
House.
wort or
Yeah.
Okay, so you transported that and then put it in.
So we
tanks,
got a van.
Yeah.
And then we got these what are they? IBC totes, and they have a bladder in them. So they would just be these bags, and we would
push them out with compressed air or whatever.
No, it would gravity feed straight into the tanks because we would take it from a hose on the side of the street on King Street and put it through, a little hole that fed down into our.
Yeah, because yours tanks are in the basement.
Yeah. Also a thing we didn't really think of because we're like, oh, the beer's not really going to leak.
And you have
here.
no elevator, right, for
No.
kegs now. Yeah.
No. I was like, we can handle getting 5 quarter barrels up those stairs.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh.
And then all of a sudden we're moving half barrels up there so we can can this stuff.
Right.
It's unbelievable. So so we gravity feed it down there, and we would finish off the beer, and we're just like, this is chaotic. So we did everything.
Just to back
backwards.
up 20 steps, our listeners may or may not know wort is before yeast has been added by legal definition. So you
Baby
guys
beer water.
It falls under
Sugar.
your license
Sugar
then
water.
because the yeast goes in on your facility.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, it's not beer until the yeast is added.
Mhm.
So we would do that. And, you do all your dry hopping there. We had 10 tanks in total. I think it was 8 fermenters and 2 brights. No brew house because we were like, it's fine. We can just do this. It's not going to be like a lot. We'll be able to make this work.
Yeah.
Well, obviously things scaled up really quick when you have to go out and create a network
Mhm.
because you're not allowed to sell stuff out of your tap room. So I started going around and going to all my old haunts in Madison and Milwaukee, making sure that this really it was cans in Madison. And then I would just take kegs to Milwaukee because I actually live in McGuanago. So I came up from McGuanago today. My partners live out in Madison.
Yeah.
So we're kind of like a brewery that is kind of everywhere, I guess. I like that we're not all just in one place.
So
'cause we
catch
get
me up
different-
on how far is that from Madison?
hour 15.
Okay,
So it's like a half hour southwest of Milwaukee.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I wonder
What's the origin of the name Youngblood?
Oh, this is fun. Okay. So I'm going to give you the real one. Oh, no, I'm going to give you the fake one, and then I'll give you the real one.
That's always good.
And he's going to do this with every beer name we ask him about.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Those are some of them are just on the nose.
Mhm.
So the name Youngblood comes, it's kind of like if you look at Wisconsin as this beating heart of
Mm.
beer, the veins would be the tap lines, and we are creating new beer nonstop. And the blood of Wisconsin is beer. There is an analogy to be drawn there. However, the real reason is I was watching the movie Young Guns, real drunk one afternoon. And I was like, man, this is a phenomenal movie. Young Guns. We could totally do that. Guns don't work in Madison. What about Young Blood? And then I went and watched the Young Blood movie and I was like, Young Blood
Yeah.
hockey movie. And I watched that and I was like, that's it. And then I brought it to the team sheepishly. I was like, what do you guys think of Young Blood? And then I gave them the other version. They're like, that's really deep and really thoughtful. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
cool.
Go team.
I love it.
And
Yeah.
the other thing I noticed, it was like the first thing you see on your website is you describe yourself as an experimental brewery.
Mhm.
Why an experimental brewery as opposed to just a brewery?
Well, we make the same beer, but it's at least a year in between batches. We don't have a flagship. We just keep things changing nonstop. And if something works, we'll bring it back. If it doesn't work, we don't. And that's the experiment. If it works really well, like some of our sours, that was kind of a lark. And now we're known for sours. That was an experiment that gone right.
And I think that's what you do well is you find a pulse and you get behind it. You don't make a decision and stick with it if the market's asking you to do something different.
Completely.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
like we are agile enough with how we put together our brew schedule and how we release beer to just make decisions. Like we plan out quarterly. So we're basically running at about 4 months time of knowing exactly what we're gonna try and put out. And things change. Sometimes hop yields change, and like, oh man, like there was a while ago, I think it was Galaxy that was tasting real bad, and we're like, okay, we're not going to use that, so we got to change that recipe. That's a whole new beer. So we just keep moving, stick and move is kind of how we do it. But
I appreciate that you're named Youngblood Beer Company instead of a brewing company because it's just I don't know, it shifts the focus slightly.
yeah,
I like
Mhm.
that.
we're beer.
Mhm.
It's just beer, even though we make canned cocktails too now.
Perfect plug.
Oh yeah.
Explain that business because I noticed that as well. And it's different from what a lot of breweries do. The canned
The
cocktails.
canned cocktails. So it's a different company. It is a sub company of Youngblood. My partner Tom, he created this brand several years ago when there was a demand for the canned cocktails, but they weren't everywhere. This is before Cutwater. This is before everybody. And he rolled it out with a Moscow Mule and a Bourbon Smash and a Mojito, and those did really well. Small handcrafted cocktails, and then I think it was at the beginning of last year, he kind of brought it up to us. He's like, we should blend entities because there's we have labor over there that we could bring over here that knows how to do certain things. We could just put everything under one house. And so we made the decision to bring it in. And now we have some really strong people working in our production facility, and we are, turning and burning on these canned cocktails. So we do a Moscow Mule, a brandy old fashioned, bourbon smash, mojito, and a margarita.
What percentage of your business is cocktail now?
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not a large. We make big batches of it, but
Yeah.
it's not. we don't even blend them in the same books.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you opened the facility during COVID,
Mhm.
which I'm sure if you could do it again, you probably wouldn't. But having done it and going through the crucible, do you think it ended up making you stronger or more resilient coming out of it?
Yes, and far more tired. But yeah, I mean I think forged in fire is kind of the real deal. There would be days where I would drive out to Madison, I would sell there all day, and then I would come back to Milwaukee and sell almost all night, and then it'd be midnight and I'd be in Port Washington, just being like, all right, time to head back. And being like on the ground that deeply that early on, and like seeing how people are reacting to the beer and the brand and everything like that, like gives you a lot of perspective. And it also continues to be one of the reasons we're able to pivot on certain things. Just be like, people weren't liking that. People weren't liking that. We've recently started redoing some of our IPAs because our IPAs were kind of just okay. I take a lot of pride in knowing that if a beer is truly something we don't like, we just dump it and we will eat that cost. But if it's good and we think it's at least good, then it will go out there. But we've been kicked around a little bit for some IPA talk early on, and I think our last like run of like 5 IPAs, triples, doubles, and singles have all been sensational, and people are like, "Holy crap, you guys know your way around an IPA." So we got our sours on lock, we're getting the IPAs on lock, and the traditional styles are the things that Kyle, our head brewer, cares the deepest about.
Who knew a brewer caring about traditional styles and pilsners and lagers? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a curmudgeon-y young bastard.
Oh, yeah.
Bobby, that makes you the curmudgeon-y old bastard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This story is so similar to our story. I get this.
So you said you'll make a batch, you won't do it again for a year.
Mhm.
So how many beers do you normally have on tap?
So our tap room only has 12 tap lines. So we want stuff in and out as fast as possible. The rest goes out to distro. We have 2 tap rooms as it stands right now. We have our King Street tap room, which is our main spot. And then we also have a place on North Street on the north side of Madison, right across from Tip Top Tavern.
Often with different stuff on tap.
Yeah, I mean they're allocated the same beers,
Yeah.
just whether or not like we're seeing that people on North Street like the traditional stuff a lot more.
Gotcha.
And the people that go to King Street want the more experimental, weird off the wall stuff. So
Right.
it is kind of a fun balancing game, but also 12 lines there. The North Street location is actually only open on weekdays from 3 o'clock on. And before that, it's a blended space. So there's a Bloom Bake Shop is in there. And so is Cafe Domestique. So there's coffee and bakery in the same building. And then at 3 o'clock, that turns off and we turn on. It becomes all of ours. And then on weekends, we're kind of all open at like 11 o'clock.
What is your current split roughly in terms of on-premises sales versus stuff you're selling through distributors, like the can sales?
I would say just in terms of volume, it's really not as much. We do a lot more out in distro than our tap rooms do because we only have the 12 lines, so we want to keep them changing. So I would say probably about 10% of our volume is poured out of the tap rooms.
Oh.
Yeah.
And your tap room, the primary one is where you brew the beer.
Used to. Now we have
Oh.
we have fooders in there, so we're doing some mixed fermentation, wild culture stuff there.
And fooders are large format Belgian or French barrels.
Yep, I believe ours are French oak.
Mhm.
But yeah, they've all been pitched with some funky bugs, and we've only done 2 releases so far. We hope to get some more going in 2025.
And the fooder, the idea is that you're able to better control how fast it acidifies, and it's got more nuanced character.
Yeah, and you can, once you kind of get what you're going to get out of that sour or that Brett kind of flavor, you can also take it from there and put it into other wooden barrels like wine barrels and things like that to finish it off with different flavors. You can add
Nice.
fruit to it. We have a bright tank there that we did. What was our first one that had some weird stuff in it? I think it was passion fruit and Earl Grey tea. And I know that sounds weird, but it was really, really unique and
It does
delicious.
sound good.
But like we're trying to do that traditional mixed firm stuff and then do a Youngbloodified version of that. So
Well, wait. So hang on. I'm going to interrupt. Wait. So where do y'all brew now?
we have a production facility on Stoughton Road in Buckeye. So it's
Not in the downtown area.
It's not in the downtown area.
Oh, because that was going to be one of my questions. Like, what's it like to brew downtown? Because I could tell you from someone that does, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it was. That's why we don't anymore.
Yeah, so you're so smart. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just like having to
Listen to him, Bobby.
having to like pull stuff out of that basement. Like we were all in phenomenal shape for like 2 years. It's like everyone's just like yoked for it's like, yeah, look at us. Still backbreaking work though.
Yeah.
All right, we got a lot more to talk about, but we're going to do it on a future episode. And that will conclude this episode of Respecting the Beer. Make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player so you never miss an episode, and feel free to join the Facebook group to get updates between episodes and to support the show over on Patreon. Links to both of these can be found in the show notes. And until next time, please remember to respect the beer.